Hi guys, and welcome to another video. In this one we're going to continue our Unity and C# series, and today we're going to look at classes. Let's go! So you will be glad to know, if you've been following along with some of these tutorials where you've been playing around with variables and some of the collection types that we've been making, when you go ahead and right click and go create a C# script, you are actually making a class. Yay! And by making those classes, we've been relying on the predefined variable types like float, int, string, lists, and dictionaries. However, relying on those built-in types has one weakness, and that's the ability to deviate from the blueprints that C# has already set. So creating classes of your own gives you the freedom to define your own set of custom actions, unique design, and capturing information that is relevant to your game or application. Without custom classes, unique applications would be few and far between. So in a way, you can just think of classes as blueprints, if that's easier, that allow you to create custom functionality in your game. So let's quickly go over the basic syntax of a class. So you'll have the access modifier, class keyword, and then the name of your class. And inside your class, you'll have variables, constructors, and methods. So you've probably already figured out, but to create a class in Unity, what we're going to do is right click in assets. I'm going to create C# script, and we're going to call this first class, like so. And now we've made a class, and you can open this up in your editor of choice. And mine's Visual Studio, so I'm going to double click and this will open up. So once it's opened up, it's going to be teeny weeny. Let's make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. Oh. So let's look at some of the features that are specific here to Unity, and some of the features that are just general C#. So when we went over the syntax, you can see here we've got our access modifier and our keyword for class, and then the unique name. And then inside we've got our methods, and we could also have our variables and constructors as well. Now, in some C# scripts, you'll find the namespaces that are being used, and these just give you access other features of C# if you like, that aren't necessarily there by standard, and you just need to tell your class where you're getting those sets of instructions from. So we're saying we're using Unity engine here, so we're using Unity specific methods, so such as start and update are contained within the Unity engine namespace. So for example, if we were to go ahead and comment that line out, you'll see here we start to get errors. It no longer recognizes mono behavior. So we want to use that, so let's make sure we are using Unity engine. So in another lesson we'll look at inheritance, because after you've got the standard C# stuff here for making a class, afterwards we're telling our class that we're also inheriting from mono behavior, which is where we can gain access to methods such as the start and update. Don't worry about that for now, just take it out of your mind. I thought it'd be useful just to create this simple first class, just to show you where the syntax was that we went over earlier, and some of the features that are more specific to Unity. So next up, we're going to create another class called our character class, which we can use as a blueprint to build our own characters. Let's take a look. So in a normal Unity project, you might find that you have a folder for your scripts. So we'll go ahead and create a folder called scripts, and we'll drag our first class scripts into there. And in bigger games, you'd have subfolders for like interaction, UI, managers, all that kind of stuff. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new class. So we're going to go create C# script, and we're going to call this character. And once you've done that, let's double click and open up in Visual Studio. So you can see here our character class is a public class. And this just means that any class in our project can access the character class and create characters from it. What we're going to do for this lesson is we're going to remove the start and update methods. We don't need those. And we also don't need to inherit from mono behavior. So we can go ahead and remove that. And go ahead and save. So this script, this class, is going to be a blueprint for making a character. So we need to think about what things does a character have in our game. They're probably going to have a name. Probably going to have like experience points, an initial health value, anything you can think of. This is where we are going to set up the properties of our character. So we can go ahead and add those variables in. We're going to make these variables public. We have the type string, or string, and we'll call this name, short for a semicolon. And let's do some experience points as well, and that can be a simple integer, so we can say public int exp. We can give this an initial value if we wanted to, so you could say 0 and then finish it off with semicolon. And then you can go ahead and save this. And now we're starting to build up a blueprint that we can use for our character. However, these are just a set of instructions. And actually, to create a character takes a little bit more work. We actually have to go ahead and create a character in our game. And that's going to be called instantiation. We're going to be creating an instance of this class where we can start to flesh out our own character using the blueprints contained within. Let's take a look at that now. Let's go about actually using our character class. And what we're going to do, I'm going to create a 3D object. Let's create a cube in my scene. Just so we've got something we can put our new script onto. And then we're going to go back to our scripts folder and we're going to right click and go create C# script. And let's say we want to make an enemy. Like so. We've made a class here called enemy. I'm going to drop that onto my cube. So now I've got cube in the hierarchy, and as you can see, the enemy script is on there. So we're going to go ahead now and double click to open up in Visual Studio. Now in this class of enemy, for a moment we're not going to need our update method, so we can go ahead and remove that. We are actually going to use the start method to actually build our character. I mean, our character class is declared as public, which means we can access it from any other class, and you can also have variables at our classes. So we could say character, and we can call this character variable enemy1 going to be equal to a new character, and then we close off like so. The variable type is specified as character, which means we're creating a new instance or a clone of our character class. The variable is named enemy1 and is created using the new keyword followed by the character class name and then your parentheses and semicolon. This enemy1 is now stored in memory. Even though it's empty, it still exists. And we can use this enemy1 just like any other type of variable now. So then using the dot notation, we can access its variables and change them. For instance, we could say enemy1, and then we can put in the dot, and then you'll see here we get access to all of the variables contained within our character blueprint. So we have the name and experience. So we could say name equals Dan. I'm bad. And then we can give it some experience. So we could say enemy1 dot exp equals 0 because I'm not very good. And then I just hit Ctrl S to save. So now we've created an instance of our character class called enemy, which now becomes our variable, which we can then amend. So our enemy's name is Dan and my experience is 0. And to see all that in action, just so we can see what's going on in our game, we can create a debug.log, and I'm going to say we're going to find out what the name is. So I'm going to put name. I'm going to open up some brackets like this, and I can say what is our enemy1's name and what is our enemy's experience. Enemy1.experience. Go ahead and finish it off with a semicolon. So now when we jump back into our game, we have our enemy class on here. Go ahead and hit play. See here we've got in the console, our name is Dan and our experience is 0. And that's because we've created a new instance of our character class called enemy, where we've given it a name of Dan and an experience of 0. So this cube is now our enemy called Dan. Let's go ahead and change this cube's name. Let's say we wanted this to be our enemy. So let's go have a look at creating a constructor. We're going to go back to our character class, our character blueprint if you like, and we're going to make a constructor. What is a constructor? A constructor is a bit like a special method that fires automatically when you create an instance of the character class. So where we've created an instance of a character class here in our enemy script, creating an instance, if we had a constructor inside this character class, it would fire automatically. We're going to set up a constructor that takes in a couple of parameters for our name and experience so we can create them when we create the instance of the class. And it's worth pointing out that a class can have multiple constructors. It's worth also bearing in mind that constructors have a couple of requirements. First of all, they can't return anything, and they must be public, and the method name is always the same as the class name. So public character, open close brackets, and our curly braces. So this is a constructor. It doesn't do anything at the moment, but let's go ahead and change that now. So when we create our character, we want to give it a name, so we can say string name and int experience. So when we create an instance of this class and we're passing it a name and an experience, then we need to assign these values that we're passing it back to our name and experience variables inside our character class. And that's really easy to do. All we need to say is this dot name is equal to name. That might seem a little bit confusing, so just to make it a little bit easier for you to see what's going on, I'm going to put class name here. I need to change this, and here I'm going to put instance name. That's probably a little bit easier for you to read. So this is the name that we're giving our character when we're creating an instance of our class, instance name, and we're assigning this back to our class name. And then we need to do the same for experience. So we'll say this dot experience is equal to experience. So this value here that we're giving it, we're assigning back to here. So we set up our first constructor. Let's go back to our project. Got an error here. What have I done? Oh yeah, because I changed the names here, then we just need to fix our enemy class. Just say delete all that. That doesn't exist anymore. I'm going to say dot class name, and same there. And then we've got a squiggly line underneath our character, and this is because we're not passing it any values. You see now we're trying to create an instance of this class, but you can see here it says character.character string instance name in experience. So now we no longer need these two here assigning these values. We can go ahead and remove those. So it wants a string for the character name, so we can just go like that. Ooh, give myself a nice capital. And it also wants experience, so we can just pass it the 0. And now you can see the squiggly line's gone away. We fulfilled all the requirements for using our constructor because it needs a string instance name and an int experience. So now this will still work in exactly the same way. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. You can see here it's got Dan and experience 0. So that's a much neater way of creating our character. If you remember a few moments ago I said you could have more than one constructor. Let's say we didn't want to initially pass it an instance name or its experience. Let's just say we just wanted to create it. We could still go public character, put in our curly braces so we're not requiring any parameters. And then we can just say things like, we could say class name equals, we can just give it a default value if you want. You could just say not assigned. In fact, you don't really have to do anything in there, but I'm going to put my experience as 0. So you could just simply do that. And then back in our enemy class, we could take out these. And you can see now that's okay because we have a constructor with no parameters. So it's going to use that one. And you can actually choose which one of those constructors to use when you type new character. You see here now we've got, it says 1 of 2 character. So we have the option of creating an instance of the character class with no parameters, which is what we've just set up. Hit a little arrow there. We can either use one where we can pass it the instance name and in experience. So we have 2 options for creating an instance of that class, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to pass it down. I'm going to leave that as just character at the moment. We can then set the variables ourselves if we want to. Class name was probably a bad choice of name. Should be character name, but never mind. And we're going to call this one Dan. Back to how we had it before. See how flexible this is. We can say it's experience. Let's give myself tons of experience. Let's go ahead and make a new character. Just because we're getting awesome now at using our classes. We've got our enemy in the scene. We need our hero, of course. So we go ahead, 3D object. Our hero is going to be the sphere. We'll go ahead and call this one hero. We create a new C# script. Let's create a hero class. Drag and drop that onto our hero. See, it's just popped in there. Then we can go ahead, click on it. Here we have our hero class. Don't need our update method, so we go ahead and remove that. So let's make a new character. So we can type in character. We'll use our character class as our blueprint. And we're going to give it the variable name of hero. Then we're going to say, hopefully you can remember what this is. We're going to make a new instance of our character class. So we're going to say, use our new keyword, be a new character. And we are going to use our constructor where we can pass it a name. So we'll pass it brackies, the good old days. And we're going to give them, say, 1000 experience. And go ahead, finish off with a semicolon. So now we've made a new instance of our character class. We've made a new hero character who's called brackies and has 1000 experience. We can go ahead and debug all that again if we want. In fact, I'll show you how you can use methods from this character class. So if you go back to your character class, let's create a method in here, and we're going to call it, it's going to be a public again. We'll call this debug stats. Let's debug the name in here. Be easier than keep writing it out each time. So debug name, that's going to be our class name, our character name here. And we also want to debug the experience, like so. And then finish off with a semicolon. We've got the void keyword. Make sure you've got public void debug stats in there. Go ahead and hit save, Control S. So we've got public void debug stats. And then all we're doing is debugging these 2 variables. Then back in our hero class, we want to access that method we've just created. So we can say hero, because that's the instance of the character class we want. Dot debug stats, you can see it's in the list there. Because it's a method and we're calling it, just need our parentheses and then the semicolon. Let's update our enemy script. Don't need that anymore. We can just say we want to get the instance of the enemy class. It's called enemy1. So we'll say enemy1 dot debug stats. So this here is accessing the instance of our character class, and it's going to debug the stats for it. That's going to print off the name, and it's going to print off the experience. Let's jump into Visual Studio, not Visual Studio, Unity, idiot. Here our console, and hit play. We should see 2 lines. There we go. So we've got our brackies experience, which is our hero, and then we have our enemy, which was me, and I'm not so experienced. Well, there we go. That's the end of this lesson. I really hope you've learned something and found it useful. And if you have, if you could leave a like on the video, that'll really help me out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.